All right. Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Warrior Arts Renaissance Show, where you give us hard questions and we give you solid answers. I'm your host, Dr. Philip Payne, and my co host for this episode is Master Josh Slater. Master Slater's been with us several times before on other episodes, but I'm going to let him give a little bit of his pedigree before we start. But before we go there, I just want to announce that very, very soon, the future episodes of this podcast will not be available on Facebook, at least for a temporary time. There's a lot of things going on with Facebook, refusing to shut down pedophilia related pages, actually shutting down anti pedophilia pages for supposed hate speech, censoring certain political and religious views, some of which I share and some I don't, but I do believe in free speech, and I'm not going to be supporting Facebook by logging in and letting them show me ads for which they get paid to show them to me. I'm also going to not let those ads be posted on any pages that I run, and the only way I can do that is to shut those pages down, to shut my account down. I'm going to be moving over to Parler.com. That's Parler.com, not Parlor like the room. If you spell that, unfortunately, somebody has taken that and used it to make something very inappropriate. Parler with an E is actually a very conservative, not necessarily politically conservative. Anybody can be on there, but conservative in the angle idea that they will not limit speech within reason. Obviously, they're not going to allow the pedophilia stuff and what have you. Because they're not into that. They're not into supporting that any more than I am. Parler, Parler.com, beginning October 1st, will be our primary means of reaching the public. I encourage you to go over there and start an account, and you can find me at Philip A. Payne. I know that's going to be hard to remember, but that is my handle over there at Parler.com. With that said, Master Slater, thank you for joining us again. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to jump into your thoughts regarding some of the topics in last week's episode.
I trained in martial blade concepts, which is a small blade oriented with Michael Janich. I highly recommend that. I'll get to that here in just a second. And trained in that for a little bit longer, and got a third degree black belt in the Borja family college system through Dr. Payne. And I'm currently working on my instructorship in Les Cuss, which is a variant of the Lightning Scientific Arnis. So studying with an individual right now through COVID times on Zoom, and it's a more hard hitting stick and dagger style system, and really enjoying that. And so that's kind of where I've been the last few years in training. Really fallen in love with weapon craft. I truly believe that the modern day warrior today, weapon-wise, is an empty-hand warrior. It's a knife-oriented or blade-oriented warrior, specifically smaller blades, not probably the biggest blade length would be a machete, if you count as a big blade, a tomahawk or a hatchet. And I think modern warriors are impact weapon warriors today. Stuff like that we see in the Filipino and Indonesian arts and other firearms. Specifically, I think the blades make a different drill pattern on your body, and they're the weapons that we are allowed to use today to defend ourselves and our loved ones and those around us. So, yeah, that's kind of my background there. And so, yeah. As far as just talking about knife work and blade work, I have really fallen in love with the blade. I started training specifically with blades, mostly because in the beginning because I was more afraid of blades than I was getting shot. I started looking at statistics and what was being done and how people were being attacked. And in my area and in most of America, you have a bigger chance of being accosted with a blade than with a gun, or that was at the time. And most everybody I knew growing up in the Midwest carried one, if not more than one knife. And so the likelihood of one coming out in an altercation was pretty high. And so I know myself, I've carried a knife since our training, as you feel like you can, because in order to really understand how to defend yourself from a weapon, you need to know how that weapon functions. And so just even if you're a little bit uncomfortable with knives, just seeing how they work. So if you don't want to train with a blade, but learning how to defend yourself against a blade, more often than not, you're going to be handed a blade because it's pretty well legal in almost every state. I have to double check states that are a little bit stricter, like New York or California. But most states you can carry a 3 to 3.5 inch blade. But do your own research when traveling. Same thing with firearms. Always check if you're a concealed carrier. Check your firearms laws, whatever state you're going to be in, and if you're a knife carrier as well, check those laws to make sure that you're compliant. Because we're the good guys. And I know I hear a lot of good old boys say, well, I'm just going to carry whatever I want, and they make this line in the sand. And in reality, we're supposed to be the good guys, and these laws we can tend to work around within the law. And so I would encourage you to understand to do that. So for me, I carry a blade length of about 3.5 inches. Specifically, I carry my primary defensive blade that I would carry is the E25. Bill Richardson had a book. I think it was Seal Out for the Streets, or I think that was the name, Seal Out for the Streets. I recommend that book. I'd have a copy of it to refer to it, but my family and I are moving, and it is somewhere in a U-Haul trailer in a box buried deep. So I don't have access to it at the moment. But in it, he refers to a CELOT. It's a CELOT precept where you carry 3 knives, one for fighting, one for throwing, and one for your friend, in case they don't have one. And I was kind of following that well before I read that book. And again, I was looking at self-defense wise what I might need in which hand and which spot on my body. So being a researcher for self-defense and those kinds of things, I began to look at what kind of knives I could carry and should I carry multiple knives, and for me that answer was yes. Kind of for the same reason that Bert Richardson stated that. It was one for me, but it was also in my mind if I had I have multiple children, way more than most people in today's world. But my wife and I have 6 kids, and it seems like I'm usually carrying one of those kids, and we're carrying something for one of those kids. And if I happen to be caught unawares, and my primary hand is occupied, either carrying a child or carrying something in my that is for the child, or just something that's mine in my right hand because I'm right-handed. I want to be able to defend myself effectively with my left hand. If that means drawing a blade, then doing so. And so, for most of you, you may not know this, but when you're startled, your reaction, if you're holding something, for the majority of people in the world, is to clench that thing. So if you've got groceries and someone startles you, you tend to your startle reaction. Most people's startle reaction is to clench tight on whatever they have. It's rare that someone just drops. That's a trained response for most people. And so for me, being that researcher, I thought, well, I want to train. I want to carry knives in different places, in my pockets, and I carry in everyday carry backpack, and so I've got a couple of blades in there as backup if I break one or if I lose one, which I hope I never do. That's kind of my take on the multiple knives. As far as I mentioned, my EDC, like my go-to defensive blade, is the Spyderco, Jimbo 2, I think actually. But I tend to be a Spyderco guy in that because I find that their knives are a little bit flatter and they fit better in concealment. This is just for me. I'm not a fan of thumb studs. For some reason, when I flick with my thumb, the blade turns around in my hand, and I like my blade to be pointing towards my opponent, and it tends, for whatever reason, when I flick with that thumb, it points back at me the way I do it, and that's just my silliness in my hand. So I like being able to flick with a finger. I'm sure there's some YouTube tutorial out there for all you who are wondering how to flick open a blade with a hole in it. So I tend to carry Spydercos or their off-brand variant bird knives a lot, as well as utility knives like either a Leatherman or a Boss is one. But carrying multiple knives means that I need to be able to use my offhand. And to me, this is where my colleague, buddies, or scream training, whichever word you use, whichever word you're researching, each word has a different connotation. I like colleague because it lends itself more to blade work. But it means for me, that training has really helped me become more ambidextrous. I wouldn't boast enough to say that I'm truly ambidextrous, but I've been trained to use my left hand. And for me, my left hand blade, I really focus on an ice pick grip. If you can focus on a blade, like holding the handle, the blade coming down. And because my left hand is better at gross motor skills than fine tuning. I think it's true for all of us. Whatever your strong hand is, your left hand usually stinks in the beginning of training because it's just awkward and not fun using it. And so it has to be trained. But I do practice drawing that blade. I practice usually calluses type techniques. I don't want to give much away in this pretty standard, but for Lightning Scientific and the Lescus MK Lescus that I'm doing now, the very first technique is an X pattern where you're just, if you're doing it with an empty hand, it's a fist clubbing up and down and down. Look it up on YouTube and you'll look familiar if you've ever trained any of that kind of stuff. So when it comes to blades, I really focus on getting that left hand into play. I know last week, as far as again go back to blade length. Sorry, I'm looking at these notes again. I'm in the middle of moving, so apologize if I seem kind of scattered. But I think in today's world, training with a small blade is vital. If we get to just out of carrying what size to carry and then where to carry it, I think training today with a small blade specifically is vital. When I started looking at training specifically for defensive uses of a knife or defending against a knife, and doing research into what was the most common attacks in the U.S. and abroad. And what I found was the majority of attacks in the Western world were small blade attacks. We don't walk around normally in modern society in the Western world with a Bowie knife on our head.
All right, that's all the time we have for this week. But if I know Master Slater, he has a whole lot more to share with us. He's really on a roll. So I'm going to cut the audio recording here and start a new one, and I'm just going to let him continue. And next week, be sure to tune in for the rest of this talk. Take care.